We are live now.
All right, we will officially call the meeting to order at 12:03. I hope everybody's doing good today. First thing on the agenda is the minutes of June 10th meeting. I'll pull those up real quick. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Everybody got the minutes to look at? Everybody looked at them already? I can pull them up if we need to.
Or I can, would you like me to share them or?
Yeah, if you want to, that's fine.
Oh, not the minutes. I'm sorry. I don't have those.
I've got them. I just got to figure out which one it is here to share. That pull them up there?
Yes.
Okay. Any corrections on the minutes or anything? Anybody see? All right, nobody sees any changes. Can I get a motion to accept minutes?
I move we accept the minutes.
There we go. I thought everybody was asleep on me. Motion for Brian. Can I get a second?
Second.
Oh, there's Chris. All right, all in favor. We'll go through the roll call. Chris,
Yes.
AJ,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and Megan.
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Let's stop that screen. All right. Technology is great. Next on the agenda is financial report. I don't actually have a copy of the financial report from Ashley. And so one of the things we're doing today is switching from Ashley to Brian. So after this meeting, we should be able to get those from Brian each meeting and go through that. But first on the financial report is an invoice, our invoice for January from McMurray and Livingston. Let me share that for you guys. Where's that one at? Hold on. All right. So there's our January meeting, our invoice from Murray and Livingston for Kent. There's kind of the details of it. Any questions on that? I'm scrolling through too fast or anything.
What's the total?
Scroll down faster. There you go. There's a total.
And Jim, I think it was sent out in advance as well. I
Okay.
can't tell you what day, but
I couldn't remember if I did that or not.
So everybody should have a copy of that.
Right. $3,482.50.
Any questions on the invoice? If not, I will take a motion to accept the invoice from McMurray and Livingston for January for $3,482.50.
I'll make a motion to approve the invoice.
Motion from Megan. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second from AJ. Roll call for all in favor. Megan,
Yes.
AJ,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
All right, motion passes, and we'll figure out how to get a check sent out. All right. Next on our agenda is the approval of the PFGW invoice. I believe that got,
Brian, you got the checkbook already?
I'm
from
sorry, AJ.
Ashley? Brian, got the checkbook already from Ashley or no?
Not yet.
No.
One of the thing, our next thing after this PFGW invoice is the resolution to switch the account from Ashley to Brian. And then I'm in the process of getting all that from Ashley somehow. I think Brian's texted her too. So we're working on making that happen as quick as possible.
Yeah, I won't have access. I haven't had access to the account and won't have it until the resolution passes and then I can get authorization
Yeah.
to utilize the account.
After resolution's passed, I'll run by Kent's office and sign everything, and then we'll get that to the bank, and then hopefully that gets put in play pretty quickly. Next on the agenda is the PFGW invoice. Make sure that, I think we sent this out as well. So this covers task 1, 2, and 3. On that, any questions on this invoice?
Can you zoom it, Jim?
The better.
Yes.
And what's the date is this up through?
This is the task 1, 2, and 3.
May
So
31st.
Jim, if I may speak,
Good.
this is only through task 1. 50% of task 1 is all we've billed for at this point. So task 2 and task 3 are still to be done. So this is only half of task 1, and it's through May 31st, 2020.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see that now that I look at it a little more.
So the total proposal, what you have is, it's and like $231,000. Is that right?
Yeah, that'll be the total when it's all said and done. This invoice is for $53,069.61.
And if I get corrected, all the work from other subs, that's you're going to build from this, Jeff, is that right? And you're going to distribute it?
Yes. This amount is for our team, and then our consultants that we have on board, Hitchcock, Pros, and BFW. We will pay them from this amount. So.
Okay.
Any other questions on it?
I don't anymore.
I assume this is what we thought we were going to be billed.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, no questions. We'll take a motion to accept the TFGW invoice for task 1.
We should accept this or make a motion to accept. All right. Oh, my brain
Give a
scrambled.
second.
Sorry about that.
I'll second.
All right, second by Brian, motion by Chris. Roll call, Chris,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Jeff. Or not Jeff, AJ.
I think Jeff agrees
Yes.
100%.
Chris is rubbing off on me. It's been a long week. All
Hey,
right.
Jim, are you voting on these motions?
I usually don't ever vote on them, but I guess I need to, don't I? So
Well,
vote
you're
yes.
a
on
member of
all
the
them.
commission, yeah.
I approve all
Thank you
of
for asking that question, Ken. I was getting confused on that. It's like, doesn't Jim vote, I think? But okay, that's what I thought.
Okay. So yes, I vote yes as well. So there we go. All right, and next on the financial report is the resolution to substitute Ashley with Brian on the account. Let's see, that is right here. Let me pull it up for you guys. I'm getting awesome to share my screen here. So pretty much we're just placing Ashley with Brian on the account. And this way he'll have access to the account to pull up financials, and we're still working on getting the checking book and the debit card and that stuff. So
I'll just point out, Jim, that it still requires 2 signatures on checks or other bank activity. So AJ and Brian will both have to sign for expenses that are paid.
Has the date at the bottom of page 2 been changed to July 1? And also where Megan signs, is that date changed?
Yeah, I can change that on the one that Jim will sign.
Well, it also needs to be on the one that Megan will sign.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So,
Ken, do I need to do anything else for new?
not unless the bank asks you to sign a new card or any new authorization, AJ. But this resolution is designed to give the bank what they need. But you'll have to speak when you and Brian take this to the bank to make the changes. They may have something else for you to sign.
Sure. When can we get this done?
I can have it ready right after the meeting. I'll make that change. Okay. And just as soon as Jim and Megan can sign, I would think that the bank would be fine with just an emailed version. So I'll send it to Jim right after the meeting.
I'd like
Brian,
to,
if you want to.
I'd like to take it to the bank tomorrow. I'm assuming that they are going to need my signature.
They will, yeah.
And, I don't know that since AJ's already on there, that this is not a change for him. So I don't know that he would need to, but I do have questions about the checks, how they are issued, and, do we have, is it online or do we actually issue
It's
the
the handwriting.
Pardon?
Handwriting. It's a real checkbook. It's not on.
yeah, so there's a checkbook, and then you have online access to the accounts as well, Brian, from what I understand from Ashley. And then we do have a QuickBooks account set up, and I'm waiting on Ashley to get me the budget and understand how to work that a little bit better. And maybe between the two of us, we can figure it out. One thing we still got to look into doing is hiring an accountant to kind of help us with our books and help us with that process. So all that's still in the works. Done. Any other questions on the resolution?
I vote we accept this resolution, or suggest, or what's the exact wording?
Make a motion to accept.
Make a motion to accept the resolution. I'm gonna put that in my notes.
Can I get a second to the motion?
A second.
I'll second. Okay.
Second by Megan. All right, roll call. Megan.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
AJ.
Yes.
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 And I vote yes as well. So motion passes unanimously. All right, just flying through here. I like it. Next is on the convention center equipment purchase. Myself and the Steves had a conference or a Zoom call with Michelle at Convention Center. Due to the COVID-19 situation, financially they're struggling. Obviously, they've canceled a lot of events, canceled the quilt show. So they came to us with wanting to know if there was a way we could help them purchase the volleyball, Let me pull up the let's see, the additional basketball, volleyball, and the netting they need to get started when the goals come in August. So what we need to decide is there's a couple different ways we can do this. We have the ability to add this into our bond that we're doing to pay for the courts. The bond that we are going through the process has additional some additional funds available. We have that option. We have the option of obviously paying directly out of our account. She doesn't think they'll have the money to get any of it. She said potentially they could get the basketball goals later in the year. If they get to have these events and get to bring in some revenue and stuff like that. One thing that we talk about is we got a quote from Yogi, and I'm not 100% sure the name of the company. Steve, you know the name of the company? Oh, you muted, Steve. But Yogi is a local guy. He does all the high school equipment and stuff like that. So if we order everything by July 15th, we get, I believe, a 10% discount. So with that discount, it keeps everything completely under our bond, total bond amount that we would be borrowing to cover those things. I know Chris has talked to the volleyball people as well as Michelle. They're wanting to start end of August with tournaments and stuff like that. She does already have several volleyball tournaments and some events scheduled. They're not, I don't think they're travel ball. They're more middle school and stuff like that, but it still brings in some revenue and some concessions and stuff like that to help the concession stand or convention center out. So, the issue we have is one, how do we want to pay for it? If we're going through the bond process, we do have to send a bid out. Steve's got that ready. We can look at that today. And, again, that bid just has to be out for 7 days. Then we can approve, the best quote and get it ordered. So there's a couple of tricky parts of that. And Steve, you may have to help me out. Did Steve Doolittle ever figure out about, we talked about them potentially paying us back for these goals in the court and the goals in the volleyball nets and stuff like that. Steve Doolittle was going to check and see if we went through our bond, if that's something that can even happen. They may not be able to pay us back if we go through the bond. So that's another point is if we want them to pay us back for these, either we'd have to go out of our own account or we'd have to figure out some way to get revenue from the events. So it can get kind of tricky from that standpoint. So what are our thoughts as far as one, purchasing the stuff for them? And then two, we need to figure out how we want to do that. So I'll kind of leave that up to discussion.
So what type of dollars are we talking about here?
Roughly about $90,000. Steve, do you have that quote she sent us? I don't know if I have it or not. Let me see if I can find it real quick, Chris. Actually, I may have found it pretty quick. Yep. All right, hold on one second. I'll share the screen.
90,880, and then there's a 10% discount on top of that.
There you go. So here's what we have to buy. So you got the one freestanding volleyball system.
Hey, zoom in, Jim.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
So you've got the one freestanding volleyball system, and then you've got 7 of the junior freestanding ones. You got the 2 divider nets. So just for volleyball would be $68,370. Then if we go ahead and get the last basketball goals they need, which is, you can see it's kind of an or thing. So
Jim, I have talked to her. They are requesting that there be the 3 of the 96, so everything is consistent within in the building.
okay.
So
And-
I'm looking here at the on the volleyball. You've got 1 of one style and 7 of another style.
Correct.
What why is there two different styles? Because I'm surprised at this because you figure we have 8 of all the same.
You know, I don't know that we got into the volleyball part of it, did we, Steve? Do you remember her? I remember the basketball part of it. I don't remember her saying about the volleyball nets. Her goals.
The difference between those two, I believe, is how you actually stand. The person at midcourt stands on it. It's much more substantial. I'm not sure if that's for the championship match or not, Chris.
Because
were the-
generally each one's going to be the same. That's why I'm confused on this.
So, Steve, you think that one's more for like championship court, like where the umpire will stand?
It's much more substantial, yes.
Okay.
The first one.
That'd probably be why, Chris, just to have one, you know, main floor or something like that. And I know she's been in, you know, several conversations with Coach Whitus and several of the volleyball people community. So I would assume this is what they recommended or Yogi recommended. You know, that would be my assumption. I don't think they just came over this on their own.
So is the bid spec written to what's here in the spreadsheet, Steve?
Yes. As I mentioned earlier, it includes 3 of the 96-inch basketball, portable basketball systems instead of the one of the 66s.
You think we should see the specs of, actually, do you have it, Steve?
Yes, just one second.
And what's the delivery time on these?
I think I've heard 2 weeks.
Yes.
But the critical date is we have to get everything done okay. So we have to release this for a public bid. That has to be out for 7 days. We receive the bids back, we open them up, and then we have to vote on which one we want to use, if I understand this correctly.
I'm sorry, I was trying to pull that up. Would you ask that question again?
Okay, so and what dollar amount do we have to get something, you know, okay, so we have to say, here's the bid spec. It's a public bid. People can bid on it if they wish. That has to be out for 7 days. So we can release it, put in the paper today on the 2nd. We can open the bids on the 9th. And then we're going to have to vote on what to do before the 5th. And if we use the Yogi sales guy, we then need to place that order by the 15th to get the 10% discount, correct?
The way it's written right now, can you see anything?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Is it the bid specs?
Yes.
Okay. You'll see, I'm going to go down a little bit. The date that I have it written right now, I was going to send it to the newspaper and it would run, I believe, this Sunday. And then it would be due back on July 13th at 10 a.m. And we would open them at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And then we would be able to order presumably the next day to meet the 10% discount. Did that answer your question?
Correct. I don't agree with the, you know, I'm not sure what the difference is. You know, I think for us to, you know, if we're fixing to be spending $90K, we need to know what we're ordering rather than saying, this is what somebody says we need to order. It's, I'm frustrated right now. Because, you know, why we need 1 of the one style and 7 of the other. I mean, I've been going to these tournaments and I've never seen a difference of one versus the other. You know.
Chris, is that something you'd like me to research for you?
I'm confused on the exact process we need to do on this, but if we're fixing to be spending our own dime, we need to understand what we're buying.
Well, I guess that's one of the questions we got to answer is if we want to spend our own dime. I mean, we have the option to say, no, we're not buying these. But then also, if we make that decision, I don't know how they're going to come up with the way to get volleyball started by the end of August.
Well, I think that, we need to think about this on the long term. We're spending now, looks like, because the floors are almost $600K. Look at spending another $100,000 for the rest of the stuff that we thought that the Expo Center was going to be purchasing themselves. And we're getting $12 a year on lease from this. I believe that's how the contract is written. And I really think that, if we're providing, all of the sporting equipment going forward, we have some kind of return on investment. And, to say that we are a government entity and we shouldn't be thinking about profit and loss or cash flow, I think is unwise of us to do. And, if we're providing everything, either we need to have more say on who is going to be at each tournament and the types of tournaments, or we need to have a more realistic rent on this. We could phrase it either, if they have, X amount of rental fee, we get 25% of the rental fee for providing the equipment that they're using that's going inside the big room.
So if we're going to oversee who's going to be in the tournament, who's going to take on that full-time job as promoter?
I'm not saying we have to, we don't have to put people in there, but we get to sign off like, okay, we're looking at having this tournament or this tournament, because what's going to happen once things get started back up, we're going to run out of tournament inventory in that building. And it's going to be looking at, should we have basketball or should we have cheerleading? Should we have volleyball? And, if we're putting, if we're putting, the $700K to make it happen, we need to have, I feel we need to have some kind of return on our investment. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this?
I agree with your thinking. That's kind of where my head's been the whole time when we were trying to think of those metrics in terms of how many tournaments are they expected to have and how many teams from how many miles away, I just think that this, it's a hotel tax and we need to really be mindful that it's doing what we intend it to do. And, without strict guidelines, I think it's real easy that this could turn into not being used what we intend for it to do. And, I think the public could rightfully get very upset with us for not overseeing it better.
And I think that's something we've gotten the contract Kent's working on with them is,
But
really,
we've been working on that contract since March.
Correct. And they know there's kind of we expect that to be finished quickly, but obviously COVID-19's put a big wrench in all this. But I also think and Kent and I talked about this on that call with them, and they said the same thing. This first year is going to be very hard to get a lot of teams here for a tournament. Teams aren't just going to come to Paducah because we're hosting a tournament. So we don't know what that looks like. We don't know if she can put on a tournament in 4 months and get 20 overnight teams, or if that takes a year. So I don't disagree with the metrics and holding them accountable. I just don't know when we're going to be able to truly make those metrics more difficult on them. And because again, we don't have a clue what COVID-19 looks like from here on out. I mean, we don't even know if we're going to be able to play sports in the fall. And there's a lot of what ifs. So I don't disagree with having some kind of metrics or return on investment. I just don't know how you come up with that.
But we've been asking for some kind of collaboration on doing the contract because we've been trying to get this contract done pre-COVID. And this is, we were doing that in the first quarter, and this is the beginning of the third quarter today. And yeah, I know COVID has happened, but, I want to see, we need to have some true, I don't know if concessions are the word, but you know, if we're spending $700K, we need to have some kind of, you know, truly rent on this.
So, I mean, here's a question. Are we willing to wait until we have those metrics and not order any equipment and potentially not have anything here by the end of August for volleyball? Or are we?
Who is this Michelle that would be recruiting these teams, or is it our commission that would be hiring someone to go recruit these teams for these tournaments? Who's in charge of that?
So it'd be a combo between Michelle, the convention center, and then these tournament directors. So typically, I'm assuming that's the way it is for volleyball. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but your tournament directors are the ones that bring the teams in. So
Right, but I mean, like, how are the tournament directors going to be notified of the facility and availability and cost and everything? Is that Michelle putting all that out there, or is it just like it's available, and if tournament directors happen to contact Michelle, she gives it to them? Or
I think it's Michelle, and I think if there's anybody else there doing sales, it'd be her team reaching out to those tournament directors. And then she's already done that to several. I know she's done it to all the volleyball people. Obviously, this all started with the basketball and Mustang Madness and all that. And then she's reached out to a couple of the local basketball people, like Lynn and Dunning and some of those guys as well that put on the smaller tournaments. So they all know what's coming. You know, now it's up to her to book them and try to figure out which ones are the best tournaments to have and bring in the revenue.
Because I know that I had a volleyball promoter contact me 2 weeks ago, and I introduced you know, him to Michelle going forward. I think as more people in the prospective sports know that the facilities are available, I think you know, not to make the comment, you know, build it and they will come from Field of Dreams, but there's gonna be some part of that, you know, going forward. But you know, I don't know, and just you know, I think it's, you know, because we're not, I mean, okay, let's say that we do decide, okay, we're gonna spend the money of our, you know, we can, you know, tack it on to the bond or however we want to pay for it, whether it's a bond, combination bond, or we just pay for it out of the account. You know, we don't know what we need to order right now. You know, for us to try to say, hey, here's this thing, let's spend $100,000 based upon none of us, you know, we haven't looked at it very much to make sure what we need to get, you know. I mean, if we need to get it, we're not ready to send it for bid right now at all.
Well, that's
Close.
their request on the equipment. They are saying they need to put on volleyball tournaments.
Okay, that's their request, but I don't know if I agree with it. You know, I mean,
it's Michelle. Michelle is the one that came up with this equipment list request.
Yeah, Michelle got that quote from Yogi, and I'm assuming that's based off what she's being told she needs to put on the volleyball tournaments that are wanting to start at the end of August. So whether that's coming from Coach Whitus, whether that's coming from some of the other, you know.
I think what Michelle's job is right now is to get that contract signed and get that approved first from the convention before she do all these other work. We are spending $700,000 and we don't have the paper signed yet that what we're gonna get out of it.
So Kent, what did they just approved what at their meeting? You may want to explain that part to them.
Oh, well, I'm a little bit frustrated because I haven't heard back from them as to what action really was taken. You know, all I know is what was in the Paducah Sun. And, you know, as Chris pointed out, this has been something we've been working on. I think it was actually after COVID. I think the contract went to them, the initial draft at the end of March, but it was not until very recently that we got back how they wanted to mark it up, and it took out a lot of the accountability provisions, and so then we went through a process. We had the call with them that Jim talked about, and then revise the contract to kind of, well, to restore the reporting obligations, to make quarterly reports, and to let us know how, what contracts they had signed, who they had reached out to, what problems they were encountering, and got that to them so that their commission, the Convention Center Commission, could consider that and acted on it at their meeting last week. And I asked them to get back with me, but have not heard anything. Apparently, their next step was to meet and try to get the additional equipment. So, I feel like we've tried to work very, very easily with them and treat them as a partner, because it is in the joint mutual benefit of both parties for these courts to be ordered and get tournaments underway. But there seems to be, in my estimation, a lack of responsiveness to the efforts that we've made to reach out to them. So I don't know where the breakdown is, but it's a little frustrating that we're trying to lay this this benefit on them and haven't really gotten the feedback that I think we're needing. I agree with Chris that I think that as a public body, you want to have a contract in place that gives you some oversight and protection in how this asset that you're paying for is being administered. So, we can go into details about the contract, but right now I don't know what the Convention Center Corporation's thinking is with respect to the last draft that was sent to them. So
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, obviously I agree with Chris and both of you guys as far as it's frustrating the lack of, I guess, importance level. I don't know if that's the right word, but just, it is taking way too long to get some things done that we should have already had in place. I'm fine with getting more detail. I'm fine with waiting. We understand we're making that decision, when we meet next week, whether we can get anything in a week or not, and then we don't meet it until the 20, whatever that date is, in July the 2nd, or the last fourth Wednesday, which would be the 22nd. At that point, we missed the discount. At that point, we probably won't be able to use our bonds to pay for it because it's a pretty tight window as far as what we can spend. So again, I'm fine with all that. We just, whatever decision we make, we want to wait and get more detail. We have to understand that we may be potentially pushing it back where we don't have the things they need in place by the end of August for a tournament.
Well, the end of August is for local middle school, and that's not why we are here. I mean, the first travel tournament for volleyball is being put on by the McCracken County volleyball, and that's the tail end of September, beginning of October. I mean, we're trying to give the Expo Center, hey, here's this opportunity to have some revenue to do your thing, and if they can't start with middle school, they've made their bed, they need to lay in a little bit.
But does that hurt us, Chris, as far as travel volleyball? I mean, how much say does Coach Wattis have in that piece?
I mean, Coach Wattis is involved with the middle school volleyball, but all the middle school tournament, the middle school games are local only. We may have someone from Graves or Ballard or CCA, but as far as any hotel room nights because of middle school,
yeah, we won't have it for that.
Jim, I will add that bid proposal, since it is over 20,000, we'll have to put that in the newspaper and also direct mail it. So that price that we got was just a price from Yogi. After we go through the sealed bid process, that may come down. So we don't know that yet.
Correct.
And Steve, do we even have the capacity on the bond to pay for this? Because I was thinking that the floors were like 570. The additional width extension for the goals, I think, was an additional 15 or 20. So that puts us at 590, and the total bond was 600,000, correct?
We
Yes.
we do, Chris. I mean, we have roughly 84,000 to work with in the bond funds. So again, that's why that 10% discount comes into being important if we go that route. You know, we wouldn't be able to take Yogi's bid without the 10% discount, which, like Steve said, if we have a bid, it may come down anyways. But to keep in that bond, we've only got about 84,000 to work with.
Okay.
Would the board like me to do some research on all of the equipment and get that back to them?
Yeah, I've already sent Michelle a message as well to try to figure that out, but we can do that, Steve, between you and I'll figure that out. So, I mean, what do we want as our next action? Do we want to say we're not purchasing anything until the contract signed and finalized and we know exactly what why we need the different courts? I mean, what actions do we want to take as a commission?
Yeah, we're not buying anything. I don't think we should buy anything until we get a signed contract. So I think we've gone forward in good faith at this point, and we've, you know.
I'm with you, Chris. Yeah, we don't need to invest all this before we get this contract signed.
Okay.
But if we don't purchase before July 15th and we don't get the discount, then we don't have enough money with our bond to purchase it. Is that correct?
That's assuming the bid, if we have to do, that's assuming the bids don't come under that 84,000, Megan. So there's potential that somebody sends in a bid that's less than our initial quote.
And I think I think that we should do just the volleyball only, because if we do just volleyball and not basketball, still leave the convention center to get the additional 6 courts. And honestly, we're only looking at new only at this point, you know, because, you know, if I knew I had, 7-8 months to try to find something that you can find high quality used out there where a arena is getting new stuff. I mean, there's other options rather than just buying brand new, right off the bat. And, it's just, I'll be quiet for a little bit. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Michelle knows that these bids, we can save 10% if we do it before July 15th. So she needs to get on her side to get this contract signed and then get it to us. If she wants to save us money, for the sports pavilion.
Right.
It's her guy.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't, that's the part that Kent and I don't know. We don't know how much of this is Michelle, the attorneys, the board, we don't know that piece of it. So, we can definitely push that though as hard as we can. And as far as the basketball thing, Chris, I mean, me personally, I'll prefer to just get the basketball now because, again, if we've got a second wave coming into COVID and they don't have any income coming in, we may be right back in the same conversation in 3 months trying to force basketball goals to get here in time for what we know is a true, we know the one Dan's bringing in has overnight hotel rooms attached to it. And so, I mean, again, that's something we all have to vote on once we have a contract and we're ready for that. But, my 2 pieces, I don't think they're going to have the money in 5 months to buy the basketball courts. And we'll be right back in the same conversation. So at this point, as far as actions, we don't really need a motion or anything. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Kent. We'll just, Kent and I'll keep working with the convention center and Michelle to get that contract. And best case, we get that by next week for our regular meeting. And, we can go over that and then go from there as far as, again, we could potentially, Steve, can we send a bid out and then not accept any of them?
I prefer not to do that.
Well, the only reason I say that is if Michelle said she can get us a contract by next week, by our meeting next week, we could send the bid out on Sunday still, have it out there for the 7 days. And then if we didn't get the contract, say, hey, we're not buying these. But if we did get the contract time, then as commission, we could vote on that and get everything within that window. I
think the answer, and Kent, please correct me if I'm wrong, we can. I think the Sports Commission reserves that right to reject all bids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That is within the bid document.
So, I mean, commissioners, do we want to kind of be proactive and send that bid out with the knowing that if we don't have a contract, we can reject it? I mean, do we want to?
Potentially, Steve, can you bring up the bid again, please, specifically looking at the difference between the volleyball nets? Because I've got Yogi's estimate in front of me right now from June the 7th of this month.
Just 1 second. Do you see it?
Yes, sir. Because the handwritten was a catalog number V1380JR. That's VB181, VB80JR, 7 of those. Because I think we could probably just talk to Yogi and figure out what the difference is between the 8100 JR and the 80 JR on those two different volleyball nets. That's the main difference to figure out on the bid. Other than that, I think the bid's ready to go. We just need to figure that out. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes. Apparently, there's been some research done while this conversation's been going on.
I just sent it out to you.
I'm sorry.
I just emailed it to him.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Jeff just sent his email. Y'all check your email. There should be some research on the difference. Eric did do this research for us.
Thank you for whoever sent that.
What's the, anybody tell me the difference besides one weighs way more than the other? I guess one's just it's just bigger.
Just about the same picture, isn't it?
This is kind of not, none of my business, but I think the less expensive one does not include posts. And so they must have existing posts that they're using is my assumption.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to come back at this at the end? I know that the other folks are wanting to present as well on this.
Well, I mean, I think we've pretty much agreed to where we're at. We don't want to do anything until we have a contract, correct?
Right, but we can. But the question is now whether or not we send it out for bid.
Well, if there's questions on the court and we don't, I mean, I think we can get a correction on that too as well, but, I mean, we can only go so far as the public side, and apparently I've been doing it wrong, Kent said, so we have to, we'd have to come back into once we got into executive session, we have to come back into the public portion, so this would fall into that public portion of the meeting.
£2,700. Holy goodness.
Anybody else got any other thoughts while Chris is pondering about sending the bid out?
Oh, we're not waiting on me.
Oh, I thought you were still thinking over there. Sorry.
Oh, I'm trying to find out the difference between the two, and it's not obvious what the difference is.
I mean, what's our general consensus? Do we think wait on the bid? Do we think send it out, kind of cover our tracks?
I think we need to talk to Yogi, figure out exactly what we really need, revise the bid, and send it out on Sunday.
Is that something we have to have a vote on as far as the bid, Ken, or is that once we've got the right specs, we can send it out either way?
No, you don't actually have to have a vote on that. You'll need, of course, to approve a bid. It won't hurt to have register the commission's consensus on the course of action, but as long as Steve has got in there language that we can revoke or not accept any bid, I think you're safe.
Okay. Do we want to put it in there where one commissioner kind of has that authority to accept changes to it and kind of oversee that? Or, I mean, we've done that in the past on some things, so.
Would you like me to read section 1? It says the McCracken County Sports Commission reserves the right to accept or reject any or all bids or part thereof, to accept one or more items of bid without obligation as to other items, and to waive any informalities or irregularities.
That sounds official.
Yeah, I think we're covered from that standpoint. So I think let's confirm what we need to put in the bid. We can send the bid out once we have that. And then if we don't get a contract, then we just state, hey, look, we're not accepting these bids because we don't have a contract. And then we can move on from there. Everybody in agreement with that?
Jim,
Yes,
can I
agree
just
with that.
understand, is the urgency, and pardon me, I was zoned out there for a minute. Is the urgency on getting the bid out, getting this 10% discount from one of the potential bidders?
Correct, because we've only got a limited amount of funds in our bond to pay for it. So if we're going to add it to our bond, then we have to have that discount. If we don't add it to the bond, we're paying straight out of our account.
Okay.
Like to put these goals and nets in with the bond with the courts, we have to stay under 84,000. With a 10% discount, we hit that.
And this 10% discount can be dragged for until we come up with this.
Well, everything has to be ordered by July 15th to get a 10% discount.
Okay, so is 10% discount through this manufacturer, or does it 10% discount through this Yogi guy?
Yogi, it's his company that we're ordering them through.
Well, I don't think that's been determined, has it?
Well,
I mean, that's
yeah,
the whole
I'm
purpose
sorry.
of bidding. And that's what troubles me a little bit about it, is that we're
For this quote.
specifying
Yeah,
in
for this
advance.
quote. Now, well, obviously, if we get a bid that's under Yogi's and it's within that price range, obviously we can go with that bid. So we're not saying we have to go with this bid. We're just saying, let's say this is the only bid that comes through, then we need that 10% discount to use it.
Chris, can you get your mechanic shop ready and start building this?
Pardon?
Can you start building this post and all that? You got it right there, facility.
Absolutely not. So do you guys want me to talk to Yogi to figure out exactly what we need?
Well, honestly, I think we've done enough. I think at this point we need the convention center to do their part and get us exactly what we need and why we need it. Yeah,
Repeat that, Jim. You broke up there for a sec.
I said I feel like we've been doing enough. I feel like it's kind of on the convention center to get us the proper bid and why we need it, and not you to keep. You know what I mean? I mean, I think it's.
I mean, I'm just looking at the bid that they've suggested, and it doesn't make sense why it's that way versus something else.
Yeah, I'm texting Michelle right now trying to get the answer. I'm waiting for the final one. I mean, she said they've got 7 partial courts from the Plex. So the only thing that makes sense is if that one is to match what they've got from the Plex, but I'm waiting on her to confirm that. But who knows? So I don't care either way, Chris, if you really want to talk to Yogi, but I guess that's.
Well, I think that for us doing our proper due diligence, we have to know what we're buying and why we're buying it.
Yeah.
And the time compression is frustrating because we should have had this conversation a month ago. You know.
So no, I'm fine with that. If you want to reach out to Yogi and get full understanding of what we need and why we need it, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So it could be just as simple as me, Yogi, and Michelle meet down the convention center tomorrow or Friday or something. So.
Yeah. So yeah, she said the one cord that's different is to match the one they already have. That's why they have. But that doesn't make sense because there's 8 freestanding systems. And if you already have one, that would make 9.
See why I want to double check?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Well, like I said, whatever conversation I have with her, I'll let you know, Chris. But yeah, let's double check and we'll go from there.
Hey, Steve, when do you need to know the exact specs to put in the paper?
With Friday being a holiday, it would probably need to go out tomorrow afternoon. I have not checked with Paducah Sun, but typically it's by 2 o'clock or so.
Okay. Once we hang up, I'll call Yogi.
Okay. All right, moving on. Now it's time for Jeff's team. So I think, let me make sure that's right on the agenda, but that is correct. So Jeff, it's all yours, buddy.
Let's give me about a minute, if you would, please.
We're not moving to executive session yet, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jim. What we want to discuss first is, and Philip Parnan with Pros Consulting will be leading most of this discussion here. This is the topic here is basically facility management, operations, and how this complex will operate moving into the future, which is crucial to understand even at this point before a site is even selected. So I'm going to share my screen. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Let me hang on a second. Now you can't see it. Let me switch this up. Sorry. Okay. Now can you see that full screen? Yeah. Okay. So what? Well, hang on a second. You would think after months of doing Zoom, I'd be a lot better at this. Hang on a second. I don't know. Well, okay. I'm just going to share it like this. Okay. So we had some project principles. We've talked about those previously. We had become a regional destination for athletic tournament play, provide high quality athletic experiences for the local community, and further develop the unique brand and identity of Paducah and McCracken County. So Philip now is going to take over and talk about some of these, what operations includes, and then just kind of how we can move forward on this. So Philip, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, commissioners, for making time for us today to have this discussion on the operational approach to the McCracken County Athletic Complex. I first want to say that I apologize, but I've been having internet problems. You may have seen that I've dropped off a couple of times since the beginning of the meeting, or you may not have, but I'm also on the phone. So if you do not see me, I should still be able to be a part of the conversation. So today we're going to deliver just a short high-level presentation on operating a complex to frame up the discussion that's going to follow. So you'll see on the slide that Jeff has up that there are many aspects to management that come into play when owning and operating a athletic complex. This is a rather long list, and it's really high-level management areas. And some of these are lead areas where the outcomes are very important. And some of these are support management tasks that in some organizations, different departments and divisions might also share in some of the responsibility. So to give you a little bit of an idea of some of the major functions and services within a few of these management areas, we'll jump to a few of them, starting with contracts. So contracts, obviously appropriate for the conversation we've been having, are about the development, the negotiation, as well as making sure that your organization delivers on the terms, that you're monitoring the progress, and then also reporting on the outcomes and ultimately making a decision whether to continue a contract or not. To give you another example, equipment management, that's managing the use of the equipment, the functionality, the preventative maintenance, documenting all of the service, and then obviously the life cycle schedule and replacement. And that also includes all the technology that would be utilized for running and operating an athletic complex. I think you're all pretty familiar with human resources, but attracting, hiring, and retaining qualified experts in sports management, that's an essential component. And then it's really about making sure that you have the right person in the right position for the right pay, achieving the right outcomes. And so in order to do that, training is also a very important component to the human resource management that happens within a facility like this, because you're trying to control and provide absolutely the best customer experience that you can, because that's what will ultimately help in the marketing for future tournaments. Your maintenance management is all aspects, including the custodial cleaning, field maintenance, facility maintenance, repairs due to use and or replacement of pieces, as well as infrastructure as needed. Marketing and branding is one of the most important components, especially when trying to get this off of the ground, and that's defining your target market, developing content to sell the facility and the amenities and the experience, developing hospitality packages, including local attractions, developing content to reinforce the brand of the experience on social media platforms, and then monitoring any posts that may happen as well too, so that you can respond to those and engage your customers and your followers. And then ultimately capturing those experiences and having somebody that can take pictures that will actually help brand and reinforce, as well as tell the story of the facility and how people are using it. And then one that's ultimately important is risk management, minimizing your liability through inspections, repairs, securing the insurance, handling any claims, and then all the legal aspects that can come from operations as well too. So those are just a handful of a deeper dive into some of the complexities within the management of a facility. And so we want to take it from here and just let you know that the key takeaway is that there's a considerable amount of effort that goes into successful operations of an athletic complex. And there's a few different ways that you can set up that operational approach as you begin that can really help you really play to your strengths and make the experience great for everyone. And we're going to cover a few of those in the next slide. So as far as operations, owning and operating is one of the approaches, and that's the first. It's where the owner assumes full responsibility for the land, the assets, the capital improvements, as well as the responsibility of programming, marketing, selling the facility to potential tournament goers, as well as activating the complex at various times in order to maximize the facility, and then responding to all the operational needs that come with that. In many instances, these operations can be incorporated into an existing structure when you're talking about a governmental entity or an arm of a governmental entity such as McCracken County. The secondary program elements from own and outsource would be that the owner assumes land, assets, and capital improvement responsibilities in full. The contractor would then assume operational control. They would also provide for the staffing, the training, the program, selling the facility, as well as activating those spaces and maintenance. There are still some mutual agreements that do need to be ironed out as part of an operational agreement. And those would be the operational and maintenance standards, making sure that the quality of what is being provided is up to the standard that McCracken County would prefer, as well as planning and development schedule. We know that there will be times for capital improvements and or repairs, and making sure that you have an opportunity to schedule those with all of the other activities that might be going on in the facility is important. And then the one that's really important, and I think it goes a little bit to the conversation that you were having earlier, is at what level will the commission be involved, and what will be the key elements of the oversight? You know, what would be some of those metrics that you would want to see as part of overseeing a management company operating your facility? In addition to own and operate and to the own and outsource, there are also instances where a hybrid model of these two is achieved through sometimes multiple organizations and sometimes just two organizations. But there are a lot of opportunities here, and most of that is all defined within the terms that would come from part of the contract negotiation. It is important to look at the potential of outsourcing as where do the county's strengths, or where do your strengths as the commission lie for owning and operating such a facility? So where your strengths may be strong, that might be a great place for you all to have a little bit more responsibility in the operations of the facility. And then where you may not have the same level of strength, you may look to outsource those components. The next slide actually talks about some of the pros and cons specifically to own and operate. So the pros are that an organization would assume total control, and that means control of day-to-day as well as the outcomes. So when you're monitoring this, the operational aspect, you have the ability to make changes without having an additional conversation in order to achieve the outcomes you're looking for. There's a higher degree of independence, as I just mentioned, by you all being able to make the decision without consulting another organization who might be impacted by your decision. And then it can also be incorporated into the county structure and financial control of the facility as well. Some of the cons to own and operate are developing a new agency and the funding sources associated with it. Obviously, that's something that has been done by the county in the past as well too. That's not extremely difficult, but there is a lead time that's required in order to get those set up. It also does make dividing up the smaller components. If this were to be a two facility type of approach to providing the tournaments, then that could pose some difficulty in efficiency as far as dividing up those responsibilities. And then there's also making sure that you hire specialized personnel, if not already on staff. And sometimes the responsiveness is not always the same to business practices in a government structure. And one example would be what we typically hear the most is refunds. You know, if there are any refunds that are issued, in many instances, the exchange of money happens pretty quickly from a customer side to the governmental entity. But because of the checks and balances that are put in place, the checks and balances could take a 4 to 6 week turnaround before the individuals would receive their refund via check. And so that's just one example of how it can impede responsiveness to business practices. In addition, marketing both the local and regional aspects and promoting that hospitality with the value added to attract regional tournaments can be a challenge if you do not have a marketing person and that expertise on staff, as well as balancing that local and regional use to achieve the outcomes. If one party's outcomes are not necessarily achieved, it has the potential to become political. Next slide, please. As far as the pros and cons for owning and outsourcing or partnering, the pros are the actual RFP or RFI, request for information process, that would help you determine who has the interest, do they actually have the capabilities to achieve the outcomes, and how well do they align their resources with your local need. There are proven models to follow when it comes to this. And again, a lot of those models have a multitude or a multi-pronged approach to outsourcing. And so we have quite a few clients that have taken this endeavor already and have several different structures as to what is contracted out and what is outsourced that we can draw on for examples in those proven models. A limited responsibility to existing county staff as outsourcing would be taking care of the majority of those responsibilities. And then limiting the financial commitment to the operations, as well as establishing profit sharing. You know, the return on your investment, like was being discussed earlier, is also typically one of the pros that can come from these types of agreements. Some of the cons to outsourcing is if the partners are not necessarily in concert with the outcomes that the county is trying to achieve, meaning all really have to fully commit to the partnership and make sure that they have somebody overseeing the agreement to make sure that the terms are being delivered on by both parties and to take care of any differences that might arise. It also limits the degree of independence, again, going back to when you go to make a decision, especially if it's something capital that could impact one of the operational schedules, you're going to have to check with your partner and or your contractor on that as well. And then lastly, these have the potential to become political very quickly as well. And we've seen it in a few instances where a management team has come in and they really look to connect themselves to the local community, which is a positive, and they get to know the people and all of the players in the leadership team as well. But then that also could potentially become a challenge when you have competing interests, especially those competing interests being local and regionally. So as we said, outsourcing can take on many different shapes, including that multi-pronged approach that we had talked about, especially if you're wanting to play to your strengths and the partners you're choosing are playing to theirs. Sometimes these are typically seen in partnership categories such as public-public, public-private, and public not-for-profit, depending upon the other organization or organizations that are involved. So with that, we wanted to at least have this open discussion to kind of start to help develop questions that you might have for us regarding operations and what we have seen from around the state. I do know that we may have another one of our colleagues on as well too, named Mike Spetz, who's been involved in several of these types of projects as well, to help answer any questions that you all might have. So with that, do you have any questions that we can help answer?
What do you recommend us to do?
Well, right now, I think we're a little too early to make that recommendation. There's still some more details that we need to flush out. I think comparing what we see from an operational standpoint also to what is required for the site that's selected as well too would give us a better idea. We really like to look at the numbers on this and kind of get your reaction as well too, or at least the funding opportunities, so that we can, you know, wrap up which is the best way. In some instances, that's not determined very quickly because they want to look at the numbers. But in other instances, that's already been predetermined and they'd like to go in a certain direction. So, you know, some of the questions that we have for you might actually help us get a better understanding of what you're envisioning for the future of the site.
Yeah, I think some of this, you know, it's kind of the question, you know, what do you select a site and then have this discussion, or have this discussion and then select a site? And I think it's probably more, this will help inform the site selection process, is understanding some of these operational big ideas and how this thing will flesh out in the future. So, you know, we can't really make a recommendation right now because we don't know the site. So we're hoping this would help inform your process as a commission in making some of those determinations.
And then some of the questions that we'll be asking as well too, we may also have some more insight at that point in time as well.
So is there a list of questions we're fixing to go through?
Yeah, you should have received.
Yeah.
I emailed those out last week before the meeting was supposed to take place last week, and so we have some operational discussions, and I think it was on the list of questions, item C under number 1, item C, and there's a list of about 7 questions there that we just want to kind of go through, and Philip's going to lead the discussion here, and we just want to get your feedback as a commission. You know, some of these are maybe easily answered, some may not right now, but I think this will help us understand your viewpoint and kind of where we may be leaning.
Yeah, and if there are some questions that cannot be answered, it just might point us in the direction that there's a few more details that we need to flush out first. So, and in some of these instances, depending upon the answers, we may have some follow-up questions for you all as well too. But as far as, I just want to make sure, are there any other questions before we jump into ours on the operations of a facility for those of you that have youth and have experienced the sports tourism from your travels? If there's any questions you want to ask, and obviously you can ask them at any time as we go through the process, but just wanted to give another opportunity first. All right, hearing none, then I do want to let you know that in many of these questions, I'll be typing the responses too, so I apologize if there's a little bit of a delay. I just want to make sure that I'm capturing the answer for our future build out of the operational structure as well as the pro forma. So with that, and I'm not going to call, yes.
You're breaking up a little worse. You might want to call in and switch to phone audio. And that way we can still hear you. It just seems to be, I don't know if it's just me experiencing that or if we're all hearing that, but you're breaking up. And since you're kind of leading the discussion, that may not be helpful.
Yes, you're correct. I actually did call in. I am on the phone as well as on the computer. So the audio is through the phone. I did actually disconnect my internet, and that may have been a problem. It may have been pulling from that while I was talking. So do I sound clear currently?
Yeah, it sounds better now. So
thank you, Eric. All right, thank you. So what, and we're not going to call on each one of you, but we would love for you to speak up if you have an answer or a perspective on the questions, and we'll try and capture all of those notes. So the first one is, what would define success in terms of the operations for this site in your mind?
To bring in the most out-of-town sports tourist and us spending the least amount of money to do so and have it be either cash flow positive or break even.
Thank you. Any other perspectives on what would define success in terms of operations? All right. Before this project began, there was talk of potentially contracting out, and I think that still is an interest of the commission. Would that be a correct assumption?
Yeah, that's still a possibility.
I agree as well. It should be a possibility.
Unless Chris wants to do it himself.
So does the county have any established maintenance standards currently that could help define, what that expectation on preserving those assets would be?
Not that I'm aware of. and most of the recreational facilities within the county are handled by those organizations.
I'm sorry, Steve, I didn't hear the first part of that.
I said, not that I'm aware of, most of the recreational facilities in the county at this time are actually maintained by the organizations.
All right, thank you.
Because there's not a Parks and Rec department for the county, correct, Steve?
No, there's not. We do have maintenance staff.
Correct.
Takes care of Carson Park, for instance, but not recreational facilities.
A lot of your recreational facilities in the county, like Lone Oak, Reedland, they are ran by their board of directors.
As well as the McCracken County Soccer.
Okay, good.
Because those are not county parks, correct?
Correct. Well, some of them are.
Well, it may be county land, but it's not maintained by the county.
Like Reedland and Heath are county land ran by the board, but like Lone Oak is actually a private park.
And the soccer complex is on county land.
Okay. Are there any county events that might also be hosted at the complex outside of sports? Has there been any discussion of what all the facility could be beyond just the athletic tournaments?
Outside of just general discussion, like real talk, or?
Can you give an example of that, Philip?
Yeah.
I don't quite understand the question.
So an example of that is the athletic complex in Chesterfield, Missouri is also utilized for hosting other events. So they lead off on their 5K run walks there. They also have converted the parking lot into a few pickleball courts and put up some barricades for the users, the seniors, to be able to play outside the facility that's right there as well too, as well as it's a large gathering space for the fireworks that would typically be happening in the community as well. So those are a few examples.
Yeah, this is Mike Svets from Pros. I think one of the things that you end up with when you have a sports complex is you end up with a lot of what we would call support facilities, such as parking lots, restrooms, and so on and so forth, that allows you the opportunity to use the facility in a way, in a non-COVID way, in which you're encouraging kind of mass public participation in events. So as Phil said, there are several smaller events, but I mean, you could use it as, you know, for food truck events. You could use it for 4th of July celebrations. I mean, anything that the county potentially does in which any current space is somewhat squeezed logistically, you may have an opportunity to relocate some of those and or create events that maybe don't currently exist, just because you have so much of that support facilities. Could be Halloween festivals, it could be you know holiday festivals, and so on and so forth.
Outdoor
and farmers market.
I think
Yes, outdoor concerts.
if I may, the county does have a fairly large park with an existing grandstand that a lot of things currently happen at, and that is Carson Park. For instance, tractor shows, they're starting a farmer's market there. I think there's the opportunity within this new facility, but we do have that existing park that can also handle those types of events.
Community Easter egg hunt, large family reunions.
All right. Is there any interest in the complex hosting any non-traditional sports tournaments? Especially when referring to the rectangular.
If it puts heads in beds, sure.
Right. I think anything that's bringing heads in beds, we're open to.
Philip, I have seen some like Little Rock, Atlanta, in Florida, a lot of places in this soccer kind of things. They build a cricket ground because it's feasible to how big is the ground and all that. So, I mean, I have so many teams that probably one time per year I can bring the tournament for a couple of days if it is empty weekend.
All right. Thank you, AJ. If operated by the county, is there a fee structure, fee ordinance and/or pricing policy and salary ordinance already in place that we could take a look at in either vetting this or showing you what that looks like?
No, not really. There is a fee structure set in place for Carson Park based upon the rental of the different areas of the park, whether it be Floral Hall, which is used for weddings and those types of things, or the infield. But besides that, I don't believe so.
Okay, and so you guys are open, if operated by the county, to essentially create a fee structure for the McCracken County Athletic Complex. Would that be correct?
Yes, I would say though that there's probably some type of fee structure that each of those other organizations have in place.
Yeah, they most of the time do, and we'll take a look at all of the fees associated with all potential users to see where those are, and then also with similar type facilities on the regional draw for determining the most appropriate pricing. Thank you for that. And then does the commission have a current budget established? And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th. Would that be correct as well?
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And who would I contact to receive a copy of the established budget?
Well, we're in the process of finalizing that budget. Eventually, it will be Brian. We're in the kind of a transition right now between our previous treasurer and Brian. So right now, Brian wouldn't have anything to give you, but I'm trying to get that finalized and get that turned in. So me or Brian, I guess, would be the correct answer once it's finalized.
Okay. And then what we'll do is we'll look to reach out, either Jeff or us to see if we can acquire that. Those were the only questions I had for this portion. Again, do you all have any questions for us?
And that would be over anything with what we shared earlier on the slides or what we just discussed.
All right, I don't hear of any additional questions. What we'll do is follow up on some of the questions that we did ask here to seek some of those answers, including for the fee ordinance and such. And then as far as maintenance standards, essentially what we'll do is we'll look at building out the maintenance standards as part of this process using what we've seen as best practices. With that, Jeff, I think that takes care of our questions for this section of the agenda.
I guess unless anybody has any questions, we would be prepared to move into the executive session portion of our discussion.
Okay. Before we do that, we just have one thing as far as new business. Steve and I have talked about potentially, we need to start looking at a marketing company to design a logo, kind of get a website started, social media, stuff like that as well. So, does anybody have this obviously would be something we'll get quotes from. Anybody have anybody in particular they want to use? I mean, I figured the main ones to talk to in town, socially present, innovative branding. Anybody else have somebody to work with, it'd be good to get talked to and get a quote from.
Now, is this something that has to be bid out?
As long as
Or-
it's under 20,000, correct me if that's the wrong number, Steve, it does not.
Sealed bids is over 20,000. Under 20,000, they're still, you need to get some quotes.
Right. But we don't have to go through a bid process, correct?
Not a sealed bid process, no.
Correct, okay.
I'd like for us to get a quote from Socially Present.
Socially Present, okay, that was one I was gonna talk to for sure. Anybody else got anybody that they want us to look into specifically?
So this is primarily for the social media or the just marketing in general for our facility?
I'd say digital marketing is kind of how you put it. So I mean, create a logo, social media, website, all that stuff, you know, building a brand per se. You know, as we get these facilities up and running, we want to have something to come back to be able to market with and stuff like that.
Okay, what about talking to Mary and who they're using to try to piggyback off of that as well?
We can, yeah.
Because I know one of the things I'd highly would like to recommend is having some kind of during the setup have a CRM that once they get added to the email list, where something's on automation where it's reaching out to them, say once a month or something, just as a friendly email or a text saying, hey, we're here, these are the events coming up, just so we're so we're somewhat top of mind, but we're not spamming people. Just kind of a friendly reminder, hey, we're here. Because I know my business ventures, that's been it's helped business for sure.
I will mention another one, but well, it's Emerging Media Productions. But the problem is that it's a company that one of my sons runs, so probably would be frowned upon.
Does it matter? Honestly, I mean, this is, I guess, more of a Kent or Steve question.
Right.
If we're related to or own one of the businesses that can do this.
I don't know that it would rule out using the company. Obviously, Brian would have to not be a part of the discussions and absent himself from any discussion and voting on it. I will have to defer to Steve as to any county rules or regulations that might violate, but I will check the ethics policy, and Steve may want to chime in with what he knows on it.
I would just have to look at the administrative code, at the exact language as it relates to that.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got them down until you guys say yes or no on that. So I'll wait to hear back from you. Okay, anyone else we should look into? I've got emerging media, potentially Socially Present, obviously whoever Mary's using, and then I put innovative branding. I know they do that stuff too downtown, so.
There's another business, I believe, based out of Ballard that has done some of those types of things as well. But I think Socially Present is about the only company locally that can do the logo and the whole thing.
Right.
Going forward.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll check with them, and if not the next meeting, the meeting after that, we'll have some quotes to look at. So.
Jim, would you like me to put together some type of request for proposals spelling out? Because if we are going to be bidding this out, everybody needs to be bidding on the same thing.
Yeah, we can. I'll email you what I'm thinking and then let you put that together. So.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Any old business we need to discuss? All right, if no old business,
Hey, can I give an update on the hardwood courts
yes.
real quick? Yeah, so I've been in contact with Eric at Connor Sports often here the last couple of weeks. Everything, the courts 1 and 2 are fully built. Courts 3 and 4 are partially built. Courts 1 and 2 are currently at the finishing place right now, getting the whatever needs to be done on that. Estimated delivery for all 4 courts should be roughly on August the 11th. And so the original time frame we were wanting to have everything ready to go was by August the 22nd for the middle school volleyball games. And so that gives approximately four normal working days to get the courts in and installed, and then a full week to get everything else ready to go for the middle school volleyball going forward on that. So I think everything on the hardwood court seems to be going along very well. I've had tons of communication from Eric going forward, and it's been a pretty pleasant experience thus far.
Good deal. Thanks for your work on that. That's been big time. So, all right. If nothing else, I will entertain a motion to move into executive session.
I so moved.
Motion by Brian. Can I get a second?
Kent, do we need any
Second.
information?
Well, yeah. Well, what are the grounds that what are we discussing sites again?
Yes, sorry. Motion to move into executive session to discuss potential sites. My bad.
Brian, is that your motion, I guess?
Yes.
I'll
Exactly.
There we go. We'll get second by Megan once we get all the proper terminology down. All right, roll call, Brian,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
AJ,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So it passes unanimously. All right, we'll give about 30 seconds for Steve to take us offline.